They thought they had all the power. My neighborhood's HOA decided that my lake bridge, the one I built with my own money and sweat, was an eyesore that violated their precious rules. One morning, I woke up to find it torn apart, as if my hard work and property rights meant nothing to them. But what they didn't realize was that I wasn't just some helpless homeowner. I had a way to strike back, a move that would leave their $4 million resort in ruins. So the question is, what happens when you push someone too far? When I first moved to the lake, I thought I'd found everything I'd ever wanted. The water stretched out like a sheet of glass in the morning, broken only by the ripples of fish beneath the surface. From my porch, I could watch the sunrise paint the horizon with streaks of orange and gold. And in the evenings, I'd sit with a cup of coffee, listening to the soft hum of crickets. Life felt calm, simple, almost too perfect. To make the place truly mine, I built a small wooden bridge leading from my backyard down to the water. It wasn't grand or flashy, just a sturdy walkway that allowed me to reach a dock I had put together myself. That bridge quickly became the heart of my property. Friends came over to fish, my nieces would sit dangling their legs over the edge, and I would walk it alone when I needed to clear my head. It was personal, meaningful, and to me, it was harmless. The neighborhood itself had a quiet charm. Families held barbecues in the summer, kids rode bikes down the shaded streets, and every holiday, the community center decorated like something out of a postcard. At first, even the HOA seemed like a background detail, just another part of the structure of the place, there to handle the little things. Rules about lawn care, parking, and seasonal decorations didn't bother me. Everyone seemed content enough to play along. But soon, I started noticing cracks in the perfect picture. A couple down the street fined for planting roses outside the approved color scheme. A retiree scolded for leaving his kayak leaned against his garage. Letters tucked into mailboxes with warnings that felt more like threats than reminders. And while I kept telling myself that my bridge was safe, that no one could possibly find fault in something so harmless, I had no idea just how wrong I was. What began as a symbol of peace was about to become the very reason my world with the HOA would unravel. It started small, as these things always do. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, tucked neatly inside my mailbox with the HOA's logo stamped in bold at the top. At first, I thought it was just another newsletter, an update about community events or landscaping schedules. But when I unfolded it, my stomach dropped. The letter claimed that my bridge altered the natural appearance of a lakefront and was in violation of community bylaws regarding unsanctioned structures. They demanded I submit an application for approval, something I had never been told was required. Even worse, they included a fine of $250 for non-compliance. I laughed at first. Surely this was a mistake. The bridge was on my property. I hadn't built it on shared land or disrupted anyone else's space. But when I called the HOA office, the woman on the other end of the phone was cold and rehearsed. She told me that all structures visible from the water required board approval, and since my bridge hadn't been reviewed, I was in violation. I pushed back, politely at first. I explained that the bridge wasn't intrusive, that it posed no risk, and that it was built to code. But she didn't budge. She only repeated the same phrase. You are in violation. You have 30 days to remove the structure. 30 days to tear down something I had poured months of sweat into. I refused, and that's when the real battle began. The second letter came with a higher fine, $500. The third arrived with photos of my property attached, taken from across the lake. They were watching me, documenting me. My quiet retreat no longer felt private. Every time I stepped onto the bridge, I wondered if someone was pointing a camera at me. Neighbors began to notice too. Some offered sympathy, whispering that they had been targeted for things as trivial as the shade of paint on their shutters. Others avoided me, afraid of being associated with the troublemaker. The fines stacked higher. $1,000, $2,000. Threats of legal action. Warnings that they could place a lien on my property if I didn't comply. The harassment was relentless. One night, I came home to find a bright orange notice taped to my front door. Final warning. Non-compliance will result in legal action. My bridge, the very thing that brought me peace, had become the reason I was living in constant fear. But then came the breaking point. I woke one morning to the sound of chainsaws. Rushing outside, I found workers tearing apart my bridge. Planks splintered, nails ripped from the wood, the structure collapsing piece by piece into the lake. My heart pounded as I shouted at them to stop, but they only shrugged, saying they had orders from the HOA. By the time I could process what was happening, my bridge was nothing but a pile of debris floating in the water. I stood there, helpless, watching months of hard work and personal meaning destroyed in a single morning. That was the moment I knew this wasn't about rules. This was war. I hired a lawyer. I started documenting everything, every letter, every notice, every photo they sent me. And slowly, a plan began to form. If they want to play power games, I would show them what real power looked like. The night before the final HOA meeting, I walked down to the dam under the cover of darkness. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from anticipation. Every gear, every bolt, every lock was familiar to me. I had studied it when I first bought the property. Releasing the water wouldn't destroy the lake permanently, but it would drain it enough to expose what the HOA valued most: their luxury resort, their playground, their pride. By dawn, the once glittering shoreline of the resort looked like a wasteland. Boats sat tilted on mud, docks collapsed under their own weight, and the sparkling image the HOA had fought so hard to protect was gone in an instant. And when the sun rose high enough, the entire community saw it. When the resort drained out beneath the rising sun, it didn't just ruin a property. It shattered an illusion. For years, the HOA had wielded its rules like weapons, intimidating neighbors into silence and compliance. But in that moment, when muddy banks replaced sparkling water and luxury boats sat abandoned in the muck, the neighborhood finally saw the truth. The board wasn't invincible. In the days that followed, panic rippled through the community. The resort's owners, furious at their losses, demanded answers from the HOA. Lawsuits were whispered about in every corner of the neighborhood, with fingers pointing not at me, but the board members who had sworn they protected the community. Suddenly, the very people who had spent years micromanaging lawns and gardens found themselves drowning in complaints, angry emails, and threats of recall. Of course, the HOA tried to fight back. They scrambled to frame me as the villain, accusing me of eco-vandalism and malicious destruction. But the irony was too heavy to ignore. They had destroyed my property first. Every email I had saved, every photo I had taken of their harassment, and every record of their threats became ammunition. With my lawyer by my side, I filed my own suit against them for property damage, harassment, and abuse of authority. And here's the part they didn't expect. The court didn't side with them. The judge reviewed the evidence and saw their campaign against me for what it really was: a pattern of intimidation and abuse. Instead of punishing me, the court ordered the HOA to pay for the damage to my bridge and cover my legal fees. It wasn't just a win, it was vindication. But the consequences went even deeper. The resort owners, furious over their losses, filed their own claims against the HOA board for negligence and mismanagement. What started as a petty power play over a wooden bridge spiraled into a financial disaster for the board. One by one, members resigned under pressure. The president, the man who once stood in my yard smirking as he handed me fines, stepped down in disgrace, his reputation shattered not just in the community, but in the entire county. The new board that replaced them wasn't perfect, but they were different, more cautious, more willing to listen. And more importantly, they remembered the lesson burned into the neighborhood that year. Power unchecked doesn't just corrode rules, it corrodes trust. As for me, I rebuilt my bridge. Stronger this time, wider, and even more beautiful than before. Some might call it defiance, but for me, it was closure. Every plank I nailed down felt like reclaiming the peace the HOA had tried to steal from me. When it was finished, I stood at the edge of the dock, staring across the lake. The water had returned, calm and steady again, but I knew I would never look at it the same way. It wasn't just a lake anymore. It was proof that sometimes, when pushed too far, Even the quietest person can change the course of everything. Neighbors still come by to fish. Kids still run across the bridge laughing, their feet thudding against the wood. But now, there's a story attached, a story whispered at barbecues, told at campfires, and repeated at HOA meetings as a kind of cautionary tale. Don't cross the wrong person, they say, especially not someone who knows the value of patience and payback. So now, when I walk across my bridge at sunrise, I don't just see calm water and golden light. I see a reminder that power only lasts as long as people allow it. And when it's abused, when it's twisted into something cruel, it always collapses under its own weight.